Hey guys, if you are seeing this, then that means that I successfully uploaded a video to YouTube, which I'm going to say is a win, because anybody that knows me knows that as I get older, the less technological I become and the less technological I really want to be. So usually at night I write in a journal, or I use my notes thing on my phone, and I just write down things that enter my head, and because maybe I want to revisit those thoughts at a later time. But today, I kind of want to give an assessment of like where I see our culture, and at least give a diagnosis from my perspective of what is actually going on, and how we can respond, and hopefully, some positivity will come. Our country is not perfect, and nobody should expect it to be. When you have imperfect people leading other imperfect people, imperfection is almost a guarantee. In fact, take almost out of it, it is a guarantee. I coach wrestling. I don't do everything perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm flawed. But that's what you get when you have an imperfect human leading imperfect people. Imperfection happens. So I know that our country, by and large, has had some black eyes on it, right? Or we've sustained some black eyes. And we all know what they are. But putting all that off to the side, this is where I think we are. This is how I think we got to where we are today. And this was an analogy that came to me earlier today, and I don't know, maybe it'll be helpful to somebody. It's like in 1776, we wanted to start a country, and we wanted the bedrock of this country to be about freedom, life, and God. Those are going to be the foundational pieces of this new country that we're going to start. So we know that this thing's going to take some time, so we're going to hop in the car. We're going to go on this road trip. And we get everything that we need. And what do we need? We need things to write with, things to write on. Get everything that we need. Hop in the car. Who's going to drive? Well, in 1776, we thought it would be wise if we got God to drive. And so God is in the driver's seat, and he's taking us down this road. This is awesome, by the way, because all we have to do is sit, relax, write up kind of the framework of this country that we want to establish, the legal document that is going to be in play for years to come. We're going to write all that out. We're going to make sure that rights are guaranteed, things like that. That's what we're going to do. Outside of that, all we got to do is just enjoy the ride, because God knows where all the traffic jams are. He knows where all the potholes are. He knows where all the construction zones are. And he knows how to navigate this road. We just got to sit back and enjoy the ride. But somewhere along the line, we decided that we wanted to drive. That looks like a lot of fun. We want to drive. So we moved God over into the passenger seat. Now, the lines of communication are still there, because he's only in the passenger seat. All you got to do is just say, hey, how's it going? Communication lines are still there. But we did create a barrier. Some people would say it's not a big barrier, but it is in fact a barrier. And it's arguably the most significant barrier, because that's the point where we moved God from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. He's navigating for us. We're missing the majority of the potholes. We hit one here and there, but we're going along just fine. A few generations of success goes along. We think we start to get this self-sufficiency attitude, right? And so we move him into the back seat. So now the barrier that used to be just the console between us and God is now the back seat. Now I've got a Suburban. You can communicate with people in the back seat. They're not completely cut off, but just by default, it's a little bit more difficult to communicate with the person in the back seat than it is if you're in the passenger seat. go along a little bit more, a few more generations, and now, what are we doing? Oh, the weather looks fantastic. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's sunny, 65, 70 degrees. Perfect time to roll the window down. Now, we got the window rolled down and we got God in the back seat. Makes it a little bit more difficult to communicate. Can you communicate? Absolutely you can communicate. But you got to start elevating your voice, almost, maybe, depending on the wind noise, maybe almost to the point of yelling in order to communicate. Then we get to, I don't know, the 1990s, 2000s, up into like where we are today. And we started, somewhere along the line, we started to value a bunch of junk. Junk started to become valuable. And so what do we do? Well, let's listen to music. Obviously, like music, like let's be entertained. You know, we used to be hard-working, blue-collar society, but now we're gonna be entertained. We want entertainment. So we turn the radio on. We listen to all the new music, the hottest new music. We turn that up. So here we are in the car, windows rolled down, music is blaring, God's in the back seat. And as we're going down this road, we kind of look up in the rearview mirror and we see God in the rearview mirror. Well, what's he doing? Well, he's sitting there quietly and he's looking out the window. What is he looking at? I don't know. We're not talking. I wonder what he's thinking. I don't know. We're not talking. I wonder if there's, I don't know, some issues on ahead that we need to know about. I don't know. We're not talking with the navigator that started this whole mission. And that's where we are today. And what we have essentially done is, over time, we have become almost anesthetized to God being out of the equation of our culture, out of the equation of our society. We've essentially kicked him out of education. We've essentially kicked him out of the workplace. We've essentially kicked him out of government. We've essentially kicked him out of almost every piece of society today, except for the church, except for churches that we go to. Maybe a few charities here and there. But by and large, he's largely absent in our society today. And I think in the previous generations, were a lot more sensitive to the fact that God was not in the driver's seat than we are sensitive to him not being in the driver's seat today. Because they started this road trip with God in the driver's seat. And then whenever he moved over into the passenger seat of this road trip, it didn't feel right, but we went along with it. And then we moved him to the back seat, which kind of felt almost wrong. But, you know, our eyes are facing forward, and so, like, there's an open road, and so, like, God is kind of in the back of our mind, like, figuratively speaking and literally speaking in this analogy. And so over time, we become desensitized to his presence, and we become anesthetized to our to him. And when you start to eliminate God, and like who is God, right? From my perspective, God is love. God has to be love. Philosophically, theologically, historically, God is love. If you were to ever remove love from God, God would cease to be God, because the very essence of who God is love. It's the process of meeting needs. When your needs are met, you're able to trust. When you're able to trust, that truth can transform. It's like go to the cross, for example. So you go to the cross. That's what true love is. That's what love is. Your needs are met. Your sins are forgiven. Your life is made new should you accept it. That's what love is. And because your needs are met, you're able to then trust the person who loves you. who can then tell you the truth. And if you trust the truth, truth can transform. So that's why I always say, like, trusted truth will transform. Well, what happens when all of that is now absent of society? What are we left with? We're not left with love and compassion and empathy. We're left with negativity and divisiveness, conflict. Like, you get on social media today and it's like you want to see somebody get owned. You want to see somebody get destroyed in a debate. You want to see somebody lose an argument. Like that's what we want to see. Anyway, that's where we are today. Now, the good news is, and this is what we have to make a decision as a society. The good news is God is still in the car, and there's an exit up ahead. We can take the exit, we can change places, and God can now be back in the driver's seat the way it was intended. But right now, our value system has to change in order for him to be put back in the driver's seat. And I'll give you one quick story and then I'm going to end this. I know that this society values junk, and I know that for a fact. And when you take God out of the equation, the only thing that's left worth anything is junk. When COVID first hit, where I used to live, I went to a grocery store. We didn't know anything about COVID. Nobody knew anything about COVID. We didn't know how long things were going to get shut down. We didn't know much of anything. But one thing that we did know is that we knew that if we went to the store, we could buy food, and if stuff were to hit the fan, we'd at least have some food to get us through that tough time. So I'm like one of the last ones at the store, that showed up to the store to stock up. And I'm thinking, I've got to get like chicken, fish, things of sustenance, right? So I walk into the store and I go where the canned meat is. And I know it's canned meat. I know it's pre-packaged meat. It's not what you would eat on a daily basis, but if stuff were to hit the fan, you better believe that I'm going to eat it. That's what I was shopping for. And I was shocked. There was lemon pepper chicken. There was teriyaki chicken. There was, barbecue chicken. There's all kinds of stuff that I went shopping for. Like, I had options. You know what I did not have an option for? I didn't have an option for cookies. I didn't have an option for oatmeal cream pies. I didn't have an option for fudge rounds, Twinkies, ding dongs, ho-hos. Didn't have all those shelves were done. Those things were clear. The only thing that was left was the junk the quote unquote junk that nobody else wanted, which actually was the very thing that we needed in the event that stuff were to hit the fan. Empty calories from a fudge round is not going to sustain you long term. That's how I know that this country, or this society, I guess I should say, values junk. Our values have to change. We have to go back to, not back in time and the way that they lived, but we got to go back and recapture some of the values that made this society amazing, where foreigners were flocking to this country, not because they were going to get on Medicaid, not because they were going to get Medicare, not because they were going to get Social Security, not because they were going to be on welfare, but because we had values that were worth their weight in gold. We had opportunity and freedom, and we had charity, and we had empathy, and we had compassion for each other. We saw somebody in need, you didn't have to go to the government, you just went next door. We got to get back to that. We got to bring all of those values that we once had in the past, we got to bring them forward. And in doing so, that is how we're going to address the fight between good and evil, because that's the fight. The fight right now is not about Republicans and Democrats. It's not about left wing versus right wing. It's not even about between you and your neighbor. All of that stuff is superficial compared to what the battle really is. And the battle really is between good and evil. And I know that there's, you know, people will say that, well, this generation valued, like this was the most important generation because we had to, the decisions that this generation made were the most significant. And I get that. But I think they were just more sensitive to the fact that God was no longer in the driver's seat. And we are coming from a perspective of God is absent. And so we become anesthetized. We got to do something different. We got to get back to the way things were. We got to bring all those core values back to the front. We got to hold on to them because they're precious. We got to hold each other in high regard because everybody's precious. Everybody has value. Everybody is worth it. If you're breathing, you're worth it. If your heart is beating, you are worth it. And we got to start treating each other like that. Anyway, been a while. This was fun. Peace.